Okay, we are live.
All right, I'll call to order this Bonds Oversight Steering Committee for September 26, 2024. President are Hoy,
Marnie,
Courtney,
Stapleton,
Karen, and we have an alternate here as well.
Nishioka.
Yeah. All right. Welcome everybody. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment or online? Nope. Okay. No action items, no new items, so we're gonna go straight to management update information items. I don't know who's doing number one. Thank you, Project Sign Colors. Who's doing that?
I'll do it.
Okay, Alan.
So we're gonna whiz through these because we want to, the bulk of today's conversation is about Civic Center, so we'll keep the updates pretty brief. But we did want to share with you all. You may or may not have noticed that there's Thank You Salem project signs out on all the bond projects, but we had originally chosen kind of a green color that was part of the color scheme for the bond project logo. And I think the feedback we got was that wasn't really showing up to folks. So we just wanted to show you that we're gonna make a new round of them for the next round of projects with the sort of typical Salem blue color. And we think this will stand out. So just kind of wanted to share that with you folks. This is the design we've chosen. I think it's the same one, just with that blue color instead of the kind of darker green. It didn't print out quite as blue on the sheet that you got, but it'll be that Salem blue color that we use for our logo and everything else. So just want to share
Yeah, it's a little darker than that typically.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Any questions or feedback? All right.
That's right.
Start with the logo.
Sorry.
Fine.
Okay,
Now we're gonna start seeing your team's notification.
no. Oh my gosh. I don't know why it's doing that. Do I just do this?
Yeah, make it just.
No, you can't do that because then we're gonna start.
I'll just close. Sorry.
I didn't hear that Brian's in the waiting room.
Oh, that's great. Okay, here it is.
Welcome, B. Martin.
Hi, Brian.
So Martin.
Are you still can hear us?
There. Hi, Brian.
Please get all of his letters in.
I'm a respectful lady.
Just look at Brian cares right now about his title. Let's have a face of somebody who cares.
Exactly. It's like, I'm still not feeling well.
I'm not sure you can hear us.
Like, I'm
Having audio.
It's picking us up.
Can you hear us, Brian?
Well, we can't see it.
Brian, can you hear us?
I'm not sure why my speaker's not working.
We hear your speaker.
You gotta use the chat.
You.
He's
Not very. I feel so bad for him.
Been there, y'all.
Yeah, dude, go to bed. Okay, well, we're gonna get started on number 2 then, 2024 pavement R&R, Alan Dennon, PE, city engineer.
Yeah, you can.
What's that?
Yeah. So 2024 pavement R&R, 2 elements to it. I'll start with the south commercial piece. So this is the very far end of commercial, Fabry down to I-5. That paving work got underway last week. They finished up base lift paving last night, and they're going to be doing top lift paving tonight and Sunday night, and then back to do striping as soon as they can after that, pending weather this time of year. So that's gone fairly well, fairly smoothly, and should be pretty close to wrapped up here in the next couple of weeks. With the Liberty section, which is what we kind of focused on last month when we shared with you folks the repair that we're going to do right out here at the north end of the bridge. So that work is going to kick off to start excavating out the green area and then backfilling with higher strength material and building a concrete slab. That work kicks off this Sunday night.
But the traffic impacts will be just at night.
No, they're gonna be all day long, so that's the difficulty with this repair is it's concrete, so it needs to set up and cure before anybody can go on it, so there's gonna be 2 to 3 weeks where 2 lanes are closed 24/7.
I saw from the notice you're doing what the 2 west lanes first and then
Yeah.
is that okay?
Most of the problem is in the west lanes. Yeah.
Okay, and so that's gonna be what, like 2 weeks on that side and then 2 weeks on,
It will probably be 2 weeks on that side, and then there's, depending on how far to the very end it goes, we'll pick that up, and then it'll be actually grinding and paving, so
Okay.
they'll close 2 at a time and grind and pave and then move over, so. That second piece, the grinding and paving will go quicker.
yeah, it's fast.
But most of the work will be done at night, so folks will drive by and see the hole, see the stuff, and probably wonder why nobody's doing anything. The press information has started to go out, notifying folks of the difficulty to access and giving extra time if you're coming in and out of Civic Center and using alternate routes, so. It's gonna be a little bit snarly for the next month out there.
For sure. It's gnarly on a good day.
How do you do
For how
anything
long?
with the signal timings or more green to that movement, or is there anything that can really be done to improve operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll check in with our guys to see. I don't think there's much we can do because of how it is.
I was guessing, and send it somewhere else.
Yeah. I will, I know our traffic guys are in the loops.
Questions or other feedback on pavement R&R?
I just have a simple question. Doing the concrete work, is there any concerns with whether, forecast or how that might impact the setting?
Not so much with the deep work that we're doing. We do the actual impact panel. That's what we rain especially. There's techniques that can be used. During most conditions.
How long did you say it's going to take approximately?
So the actual trench repair and concrete slab is 2 to 3 weeks, and then another week to 2 to do the grinding and paving inspection.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, go for it. Ellen down PE.
Yeah. Still keeping it licensed.
Yeah.
So Gilchrist, work continues between 22nd, where we've reopened the intersection, and 13th. And I think last month I showed you all kind of some of the prep work for the new culverts, the new culvert that's going in on the 4th of Pringle Creek there. That box culvert is being laid in now. And they're still on track to pave in October and open the street back up in November. So that's good news. In the meantime, phase 2 plans for the section between 22nd and 25th are getting close to being ready to go after later this year. So we're making progress on that segment as well, and that will go into construction next year. You all asked about a project tour last time, and I checked with our project manager. The next 2 weeks would be a great time to do that. So I just kind of wanted to check here. I think afternoons are kind of the best time there as things are winding down on the site. Would be a good time to take folks out there and look around. And we can kind of accommodate whatever all works for you as far as days of the week. So I don't know if anybody has any dates they want to shout out that don't work. Otherwise, I'll just send out 2 or 3 options over the next couple of weeks in the afternoon.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays don't work for me.
And Mondays never work.
Okay,
So it sounds like we're looking at Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
We'll probably target a Thursday, or maybe if we do Friday, we do more like around lunchtime.
okay.
Friday the 4th is really good for me.
I may not be there, but you'll be in good hands with
And some of the logic is good too.
project folks. Okay, we'll send out a few options to the whole group and let us know what works, and we'll accommodate as many of these we can.
Great.
And then the others get a special.
Potentially.
It looks good.
All right, local vendor report, Alan. You are still up. Still PE.
Get out of the spotlight. So you got a copy of the local vendor report. It's updated. I think the only things I wanted to point out were the list is growing. So we've got front and back all the way now with all the different firms that are signed on. A lot of design work ongoing and some construction as well. We're right at 70% awarded to local firms, so that's really good. That number is going to decrease because right now with the Civic Center project, and it's shown here, Howard S. Wright, they are Multnomah County, and they will have the construction work show up there, so that number will drop. But we will, as they get into that construction work, we'll report to you on the subs they're using and how many of them are local, so we'll be able to break down that number. Right now, those numbers are really solid, and I'm happy to see how much work is staying within Marion and Multnomah. That's it. Let's just-
Any questions on that?
I have a quick question, kind of reaching back to your previous performances. I heard that we were having some trouble finding white paint. Is that?
Yeah, we did have some trouble finding white paint. I wouldn't say it's conquered, but we scraped up enough to get the project with the buffer bottle planes mostly done. So I feel the other day there's a few spots left, but yeah, there's been a region-wide shortage of that methyl methacrylate white color material that we use, so.
But what about the green paint? That's what she was.
I was not
I
asking.
have not
about the
heard about
paint.
green paint shortage. Different material.
All right.
You can just paint everything green. Is that what you're wanting, Mayor? No?
Anything else on local vendor report? Okay, we're off the hook for a minute, so we're going over to Josh for bond eligible uses.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to miss the last one, but I heard there were a couple questions that came up about eligible uses of bond dollars and a couple things that I
I
didn't
don't remember the context. Can somebody remind me?
It was with the Civic Center, specifically like I think how much was allocated to the Peace Plaza.
Oh, that, okay.
And then just generally, so I asked a couple questions of our bond council that confirmed our general understanding. One was that, the Peace Plaza amount isn't specifically called out. So there's no requirement or threshold or anything that has to be spent there. In fact, how we word the bond language, we make sure to have the language set up to expected to include. So there's no legal requirement to even do the project. Please do it is. But as far as the threshold for how much that we're not going to get help from bond counsel on that. She's not going to offer anything. The other question I asked was on bond premium. So the bond, we issued $100 million in bond. We got about $7 million in premium. Just to clarify for the committee, it carries the same restrictions as the issued dollars. There's no difference, and the same is true of any interest earned on those dollars before they're used. They all carry the same restriction of the bonds. And again, the language is fairly broad for what you could allocate those dollars to. So there's no requirement to allocate them to one project or another. It's up to this committee and ultimately to the council's discretion.
So we just need to think of them as bond money.
That's
Nothing else.
exactly right.
Okay.
It's a little different. Previous issuances, they were single issue for fire or streets and bridges or for the library. So this is a kind of a new thing for us to allocate bond premium amongst multiple categories of projects. So it's something we'd like this committee to think about, and we'll stage that for a conversation with you.
And we anticipate potential premium in the future as well.
It's a really good question. The municipal bond market is a little bit volatile right now. Things are changing and moving. I haven't looked at any recent issuances, but I would expect some premium, maybe not to the level we got the first time, but I would expect more into the future when we go out here in another year and a half.
Okay. Questions? All right. Thanks, Josh. Enterprise Resource Planning Update, Krishna, DCM, and Josh, CFO. You want me to take it? Yeah, so as we speak, the reason we're in this room is the RFP selection committee is doing demos from proposers. So we got 13 proposals.
The committee narrowed it down to 4 implementers to actually hear demos from with 2 software companies. So two implementers for each software. The two softwares are Workday and Oracle Cloud, Oracle Fusion, something like that. So they're going through that process. I hear really good things. I also hear really bad things.
I was just gonna say, like,
I'm like, wait a second.
Josh, where are you getting your news?
I think here especially, I mean, I think there's a bias on either side because the city currently uses Oracle and we've heard a lot of things about Workday at the state. So
Yeah.
there's kind of competing biases going on. So we're hoping with our RFP committee, we just have an open mind, and we'll definitely do reference checks.
Could you talk a little bit more about what you're saying? There's 2 different, like, so basically it's like 2 different providers, each 2 using the same software?
Yeah, correct. So the way the proposal was set out is it's not just the purchase of the software, it's the implementation and onboarding. So there's companies out there that's all they do is they bring software on board and they implement it with organizations. So in this case, there's only 2 softwares, but there's 2 different implementation companies that are proposing on each of those. Which will make a difference, right? If you want to go with a more, high touch implementer, it's going to cost more, but it's going to take less city resources, and the inverse, if the city wants to contribute more resources, it could cost a lot less. So that's what our RFP committee is balancing. I do have good news. All of the fee schedules, at least right now, we haven't gotten to contracting. It appears it will meet our current budget, at least right now. We'll see if the scope changes or things move. But that was one of my first questions.
That's not a common thing to hear.
No, and we'll see if that holds. Christian might have a different view on it. But right now things are looking good, and I'm thankful that the RFP committee is taking time away from regular tasks to do that. It's about 2 weeks of just demos from those proposers.
Wow.
And then they'll narrow it down to 2. And we'll have further conversations with them in early November. Looking to award at the end of November, and then we'll go into contracting, which will last for probably 2 or 3 months before we actually award a contract and we'll get a start date.
Questions?
So just to kind of add on to that, a couple of pieces that we are looking into, whether it is like Workday or Oracle Fusion, that's the current version. It's not necessarily what it takes to implement it today. What is the cost to implement it today? We have to look into that overall cost of ownership. So that's the piece that often organizations miss, right? So I know the team has been actually pretty diligent about looking at all those pieces. And then also with the current environment that we are in with our contracts and the way our systems are implemented, it is pretty complex, and we are looking at, kind of taking away the customization as much as we can, but yet we need a software that also accommodates our organizational needs, right? So we have to be very careful about which one it is. The other piece, just to kind of add on to that, if it is Oracle, I think Josh and I talked about it a little bit. My thought process on that, we already have infrastructure. We could go cloud. It's not a big deal, but is the cost still the same, right? Workday is a brand new implementation, but if it is Oracle, should that be the same cost? And that's something that we have to continue to have those conversations with the vendor. So there are a lot of pieces here, a lot of moving pieces.
So if we already have Oracle, and apparently it's not meeting our needs because we're out purchasing new software, why would we be considering?
So right now, the Oracle that we have is an obsolete system. We are not on the current version.
Oh, okay.
We are not on Oracle Fusion. So this is another piece that we as a city have to look into, not just ERP, but with any system that we have. Every system has its own pros and cons, but implementing the system in a way that we have those functional expertise in-house and we are using the system to its full potential. That is not something that we are actually good at because it requires some resources to be able to understand how the system works and how it needs to be used. And so that's kind of what we want to do it differently this time. It's not the system that we bring in, but also are we using it the right way? I think we talked about it. I don't think we are using the current system the way it should be. And because it's not on the current version anyways. We were ready to do the upgrade, but that's when we said, if you're ready to do the upgrade, let's look at what our options are. And so based on our options, we might just actually go back and say, maybe we should just upgrade it with a different path. So we need to think about that.
In either case, the effort, I think it might be a little bit less costly, but the impact to the city, I think, is pretty similar.
Yeah.
Because there's such a huge gap between versions.
Yeah.
Right, Krishna?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I guess I just have a comment, being a state employee with experience with Workday. I guess I'm just offering, I have some different perspectives, especially from the challenges of balancing what's in the collective bargaining agreements versus Workday and changes and some of the things that have come up in regards to that, working remotely, the cost centers, a whole bunch of things. I don't know if I can be a resource, but I have been working with it the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, that would be helpful. I know Nathan from our legal department, we were just actually talking about that. With the Workday, that has been one of the most common feedback that everybody is receiving. A lot of grievances right after the system is implemented. There is one organization that had 500 grievances right after Workday was implemented. I don't know if the state, but that's something that we can't afford to do. So
Yeah, anytime you have new software in an environment like this with a diverse workforce, with a variety of different work units. I mean, when I was the president of our local, the county implemented a new software system that couldn't accommodate the same schedule of paydays. And so they just changed the schedule. And so, of course, you can't do that in a collective bargaining environment. You can't just make changes unilaterally. And so regardless of which system it is, I think there's going to be implementation issues like that. You have to, one of the key factors in my mind is how flexible is this to accommodate local needs? That's the issue. Some can be very flexible and some not so much.
yeah, and we want to be, I mean, I think we knew that. I think that was one of the reasons why we selected Oracle, because it allows your contracts to be more complicated and, kind of whatever the flexibility that they can give. But we want to have that open mind to see if there is a different way to do business and if there is a different system we can bring to reduce that cost, right? So for me, the number one priority is, one, we have to meet the city's needs, but also reducing that cost of ownership for a number of years is what is the goal with this project. So.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Okay. We are now on to the main event, which is the Civic Center retrofit, Aaron Kimsey PE.
Okay, so thanks. Last time we were here in August, we presented a spreadsheet that had 3 columns, kind of project minimum, target value, and if we had all the money for this is what we could get. And on that the far left column, the project minimum, we had as a team put together all of the improvements that we were going to make with the project, and then essentially used up all $39.5 million for that's allocated for the project. And so you guys said, hey, go back and revise that list, really look through it and determine what are the really things that we have to do, the requirements, and scale that back and then come back to us. And so we've done that today. So one of the things we did is we wanted to be really clear about why improvements are making that left-hand column, that what we're calling the project minimum. And so we got smarter about those improvements, talking to City of Salem, Building and Safety Code officials, and looking at further analyzing the seismic improvements with the project. And so So the first criteria that we looked at was, okay, is it a requirement of the seismic project or is it code required? And so if the answer was yes to any of those things, then they made the list. Further down was what we were calling tier 1 improvements. So these are items that aren't required by code, aren't really required by seismic. But as a project team and a steering committee, we felt like these are items that are at or near the end of their life. They're really poor shape. It makes a lot of sense to do those improvements now. And or they provide an economical advantage to do it now. Oh, and also a logistical advantage. We're in the building, people are outside the building, and so let's try to take advantage of the opportunity that's presented itself. And then lastly is a tier 2 measurable. So these are items that they are below the line, may not be able to afford them under our current funding. But they do match with our master plan goals. And so so we wanted to present all of those to you guys today. The next one. So yeah, so this is that 3-column spreadsheet. Got a little bit of a snafu on the title there, but anyway, taking the criteria into account, and what we've done is highlighted some of the changes in yellow. So the things that are required are $34 million. So that leaves us with almost $5.5 million of available funding to do a tier 1 or tier 2 improvement. And so some things I wanted to highlight as far as changes from the previous time we met was, Pease Plaza. We heard originally we had, I think, $2 million to do something at Pease Plaza. And so we've scaled that back. We've included $850,000. That's approximately an allowance of $100,000 to repair the fountain, and then $750,000 to do other improvements, concrete, landscaping, et cetera. Interior construction is only remodeling and where it's required. So where we're doing the seismic improvements, we have to do some of those tenant improvements in those areas. ADA upgrades to restrooms, break rooms, and select door locations. We did hear from the fire official that we are required to install fire sprinklers throughout the building. And so that has an impact that I'll get to into a sec with other things surrounding that improvement. Electrical.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Some of the stuff you explained to me during my meeting, our pre-meeting,
As far as
how we got in that situation with the fire sprinklers.
yes, so as part of the improvements, we're having conversations with our building and safety, and that was one of the early questions that we had was, this building is currently not sprinklered, and so do our improvements trigger in making those improvements? And the answer is yes. And the reason is because anytime you come into, anytime you're doing any kind of improvements to a building such as this, there are certain things that may trigger that need to be improved. And so when this building was constructed in 72, it actually, my understanding is it didn't actually meet code for sprinklers at the time.
Right.
And so we're kind of having to go back retroactively and put in sprinklers to be code compliant.
So what they did is they went back and looked at the code from 72 and they're going to hold us to that code, which is kind of how it works. And the building was built not to code back then somehow. So
So
now we're having to pay for that.
yes,
Could have been an interpretation issue, not quite sure, but yeah, the new interpretation is definitely that the fire sprinklers are required.
I think partly, I'll probably get out of my wheelhouse a bit, but there's also, part of it has to do with length of exit. And so because we have the atrium that's an enclosed building, but we have all these exits throughout. And so, but that still counts as an exit length. And so that's that part of it.
Any change with new codes
Other than ADA, just mainly ADA.
That was my question with ADA. So you mentioned that when you this project is large enough to trigger ADA upgrades, but only where you're doing work, so not throughout the entire building?
No, that was only for making like remodel improvements where we impact, where we have to do remodel improvements, but we're doing ADA throughout.
Okay.
So there's, I think, 7 or 8 restrooms that will have at least one ADA installed. And there's some doors that are not compliant. There's a lot of handrail and railing that's not compliant that will be improved.
Are there any issues in the chambers?
Like the entire thing,
Yes, we
from the minute
do.
you walk in the door, yes.
In our base, in our project minimum, we are including an ADA restroom, one ADA restroom in the chambers and a ramp. A flat floor, we'll get to that, but a ramp that will allow folks to get down to the bottom of the floor. That's in the project minimum currently.
I know the city is self-insured on a lot of risk. Is the physical property self-insured as well?
It is.
Okay,
We have catastrophic insurance.
Yeah.
But no extra.
One thing I wanted to note, because I'll get to it more in a sec too, under the project minimum, we are not improving the skylights. So we are creating the seismic connections that need to be made to strengthen and make sure that the atrium is secure in a seismic event. But we are not including replacing the acrylic panels that are up there. It's going to be a question on whether or not we should be doing that. So
My feedback to the group was that that would be a great thing to do, but there are alternatives to exit that don't involve the atrium. So to me, it wasn't mandatory. It was more of an optional, given that when you see the budget, there's almost no wiggle room. So, yeah.
yeah, so the issue, well, I'll get into the acrylic and we can talk more about that. So yeah, let's go to the next.
Do you want to talk about electrical?
Just Aaron, real quick before you get off this slide, it's important to point out that the fire sprinkler requirement triggers a lot of other stuff. And so they're highlighted here in yellow, but if you look up at the ceilings right now, you see there's no fire sprinklers inside this room. In order to install fire sprinklers, which is largely everything, the long pipes go above and then they penetrate with just the sprinkler heads below. We have to remove the ceiling. So the ceiling has to get removed throughout this entire building. That's a trigger because of the fire sprinklers. Also because this ceiling tile is an unusual shape, we can't replace things like the light fixtures themselves inside of the general space inside this building. So lighting has to get replaced as well as the ceilings because of the fire sprinkler system requirements.
So there's kind of a snowball effect.
Cheers.
By doing the fire.
New lighting.
Do you want to talk about electrical or should I go?
No. Okay, so this is the priorities spreadsheet that we put together. So we have an available balance, our budget of just under 5.5 million. And we've got 4 items on the tier 1 that we are as staff are recommending. So similarly to what Ricardo just said, above the ceiling tiles is the HVAC ductwork and VAV boxes and all kind of the systems that operate with the HVAC. I was shown tell the existing duct is actually called duct board. It's not the metal duct work that you see today. And so it's fiberglass. It comes in one big panel and then it folds together into a box and then they tape that seam. So there's concerns that as we go in there and replace provide the sprinkler system, that this system could be fragile if the tape is not in good condition. It could create some issues. So that's why we're recommending this as one of the improvements. I can pass this around. I'm curious to see it, but not hazardous or anything like that.
That's what I was gonna ask. That's my next question.
It's not our lunch, but it's not hazardous.
It's not hazardous, but it is interesting that the air flows through this portion of the board. So.
And we have a picture a little bit later on, but you can kind of see, I mean, facilities over the years has done what any facilities department is expected to do. They've retaped spots, they've installed, you know, where things have fallen apart, they've installed metal, and then there's duct tape holding that together, but there's a lot of reliance on the word duct tape.
Similarly,
Perhaps some bailey wire.
Yeah.
Similarly, the domestic water. So the domestic water is also above the ceiling tile. It's at the end of its life. I have a picture here in a sec to show you some of the condition that it's in. It's been on the facilities radar to be replaced. And I think they were hoping that we could do it with this project, but it's on the tier 1 list because it's not required. And so we wanted to include it here. I'll just review these next two and then we'll go to some pictures that show some more detail. The skylight, as I mentioned, currently we're just doing the seismic portion and we're leaving the skylights as is in place. There is some concern that in an earthquake event that the existing brittle acrylic could break apart and fall down. Not because of the lack of seismic integrity, but because just the age of those panels. And then the last one on tier 1 is a new roof. So currently we are not providing for a new roof. And by doing that, it complicates the construction a little bit. We're having to build the seismic from underneath rather than from top. And so in doing that, it actually creates a $500,000 premium to construct it that way. And so we could technically, if we chose to, we could do the roof and it would, the roof on its own is 1.5 million. And so by adding the roof now, it would reduce the seismic work by 500,000. And so we could get the new roof at a kind of a cost advantage that they're looking at now. As you can see in red, if we were to accept the top tier 1 items, we would be in a deficit. We are tracking some other city fund contributions to this project and the TBD. I don't know if you want to speak to those at all or.
Yeah, I can. So along with a lot of general fund departments, this building houses building safety, utility fund, public works administration. And then for general fund departments like finance, there's other funds that contribute indirectly to our finances to cover our costs. So one thing we're looking at is what portion of the project makes sense to spread across those different departments. Right now, it's probably looking like around 2 to 3 million. But of course, we'll take that to city council as a recommendation. And then that will help offset some of the costs. It will move around a little bit as pieces of the projects get put in or taken out. Until we have the final scope, it'll be really hard to know exactly, by square foot, what the cost is. But we're looking at around that 2 to 3 million. We're also, we're talking about perhaps moving the health hub. It's still under consideration, or some of the other kind of wellness pieces being funded by the self-insurance fund. Self-insurance fund isn't in wonderful shape, so we're trying to figure out what that looks like. But there is a potential for more dollars.
They're currently off-site and we'd be pulling them in for the.
Yeah, exactly right. So there's a ongoing operational savings for the health hub to move on site.
Yes, well, I want to get into some of the details briefly, but I think what we want to get out of this meeting today is an agreement or some recommendations on accepting the tier 1 improvements. And if there is a desire, I'm going to get to the tier 2 in a bit here. If there's a desire to include tier 2 items, then we would need to look at whether or not they could be funded by these other city contributions potentially, or some other funds that we might be able to either the bond premium or whatnot. But really, the goal is to determine what our tier 1 improvements are going to be moving forward.
And if I may, Aaron, I think there could be some value in prioritizing the tier 2. So if we get further in the project, contingencies can be reduced, what pieces might fall back into the project, or if as we get contributions from other funds to freeze up dollars, in what order would you add things back, or if there's something else?
And then I have a quick question, particularly Chris. On the number 2 one, this is the time to replace the domestic water system. Are you saying that? Is it
Subliminal
Is it
message.
now time to do this, or is the cost of this the time to do this? Does that make sense?
No, this would be a good time to do it.
Because we're gonna have people out of the building,
Yes.
which is a huge.
The ceiling
I'm
tile,
wondering if the cost that was there was the time,
oh, no,
It's everything.
not material.
yes,
Yeah, all of it.
no,
So we have groundwater sometimes.
Yeah.
That's kind of.
Yeah.
It's just a note to the project.
On Monday.
This is the time.
this is the time, yeah. So I'm gonna come back to this
It's like, wait.
slide, Kelly, if you can scroll to the next one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is, I just wanted to kind of get a little more detail on some of the existing improvements or existing conditions. So obviously this is the paper ductboard as I showed you here. And it's where they've done some replacements. There's some metal and there's duct tape, and this is just a snapshot of one location here at the city hall. This water line pipe actually was just recently removed, and our facilities took a picture of it and sent it to us. Not all of the pipe is in this condition, but certainly, as you can see, this facility does have issues with rust in the pipe. They ever have to do a shutdown and then re-energize the pipes. That hammer causes some of that rust to break loose, and then we do get facilities that have to work through, flushing the lines to make sure that the water is not
Cleaning out the filter.
yeah, every filter gets caught. So you guys know, we can go to the next one.
The subject line of that email was, this is the time to replace the.
Yeah.
Are there particular parts of the building where it's an issue, or is it beautiful?
I'm pretty sure it's uniform. So I just want to talk briefly about skylights again. I kind of already mentioned this before, but currently we're not, we're maintaining the existing skylights. We can do that. We can secure and seismically improve the building and that atrium area. But the risk is, we have the highlight in red, the risk is it's 50-year-old acrylic. It's more than likely brittle. And there's no guarantee that in a seismic event that it would break and fall down to the atrium level. To your point, we don't know when an earthquake will happen, so there could be people in the atrium when it happens. There are stairs that kind of direct you down into the atrium. So if it were to happen and we had a uniform exit strategy, I don't know the realisticness of having someone at that staircase right out here saying, no, don't go into the atrium. Just something to think about.
One other thing to think about, if I can
Yeah.
add something, we had our contractor since Monday talk to a couple of vendors about the potential idea of just replacing that old acrylic rather than putting in new skylight system and flat walking roof, areas up there, which you saw the additional price is quite significant. So in theory, it would be cheaper to replace the acrylic panels. The problem is one vendor has said no, and the other vendor hasn't quite said no yet, but basically they've said back when that skylight system was constructed, they used construction techniques that relied heavily on glue and caulking to hold those panels in place. That's not how they do things anymore. So there's a little bit of this. I'm a company who does things professionally. I'm speaking for them. I don't really want to go and do an unprofessional job for you, even though that's what you're asking me to do. I wouldn't be able to warranty it either. So there's this kind of weird situation where in theory, you could replace a broken panel, but completely redoing the system and having them essentially put their name on that system when it's not the way that they construct skylights anymore is part of where the challenge is coming into play. So that is likely going to head towards a dead end.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Ricardo. So you're saying basically you need to remove the whole structure and put a whole new structure in? Is that instead of replacing panes?
Correct.
Yeah, which is what this $2.6 million is reconstructing the entire atrium with 50% was it?
flat walk. So
Flat
basically, it would be kind of, instead of all atrium
walk, like it is now.
panels like it exists right now, it would be a combination of, would be half the amount of skylights, and in between each one of those rows of skylights would be walkable paths for facilities maintenance to be able to walk in between the skylights, which is ideally, if we were gonna replace it, that's what they had requested.
That's part of the reason why you have all the leaks and everything right now, is because they
Yeah.
really can't safely access that.
Right.
I get one more for the
Only
roof.
Blue and Paul might have had something.
Yeah, exactly. They can't get out there and maintain it.
So this is just a little more detail on the roof. The existing roof is 25 years old. It's not the existing roof. So we could probably get 5 to 10 more years out of it. But as I mentioned before, if we are to maintain the existing roof and do our seismic work, we have to work from underneath, which it does have a $500,000 premium. And that's just complicated and a little harder to perform. You had asked us to put together some energy cost savings potentially to kind of identify what that would look like. So there is some cost savings, but it's fairly minor. It's $18,000 over the year, and then 90 over 5 years. And so we looked at both cooling, heating, and HVAC systems.
And we as a team sort of went back and forth on the roof, because on the one hand, facilities have been saying they've been chasing one leak for a couple of years now. So they've been spending like, I think over the last couple of years, they spent like $20,000 trying to chase that one leak, but it is only one leak. They've also said that the roof, while it's 25 years old, they would rank it as like maybe a 7 out of 10, which isn't really precise, but it doesn't mean that it's in terrible shape. On the one hand, you could maybe save it, but that trigger is what Aaron hit on, is when we realized that we're gonna, instead of getting a new roof and spending that $500,000 on the value proposition for your building of a new roof, we would essentially be wasting $500,000 on doing the same seismic work that we could otherwise do from above. So it buys you a much longer period of security for your roof and applies that $500,000 in the team's opinion in the right area, in the right spot, which is long-term roof as opposed to wasting money on seismic.
Okay, we'll go to tier 2.
I have a question about the roof. So you talked about 50% replacement to the flat roof deal. Can you tell me a little bit about that number? Is it 50% because that's required for something structurally or whatever, or
It's not
there's
required
no
to-
ability to go down to 40 or 30 or 25%?
Yeah, that trigger is historic. It's an historic trigger.
Okay.
So we've been told by our staff historian that because this building is on a historic register, anytime you impact more than 50% of it, I think we talked about this before, but anything impact more than 50%, it requires a class 3 action. And you have to go through the historic landboard and
so those skylights are considered a key feature of the
My
building.
question was actually going the other way.
you
Do you have was 50% some magic number because there's some structural benefit to doing it that way? Or could you go back to 40% or 30% and get a bigger savings and still get the same impact of pathways and replacement of some of the?
I don't think it would work that way. The savings would be if you decreased the skylights more than 50%. The flat roof area is going to be cheaper than the skylights. So if we went that direction, it would get more expensive.
But if you went that direction, even if you're less than 50%, that means you're impacting it more than 50%. Right? If you're replacing the current system with only 40% of the current system, I mean, you're leaving 40%, but that means you're replacing 60%, right?
Yeah.
So that means you're.
we were trying to maintain.
Going the other way.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
instead of making it 50% the new flat roof, only 40% or 30% the new flat roof.
Okay.
But
Get some more windows.
It's completely putting in just all skylights, but the modern skylights was way more expensive. Yeah.
just one.
Can we go back to the spreadsheet for a minute?
Yeah, let's go back up. So I want to.
So people can put numbers around what we've just been talking about.
Yeah, so we were just highlighting the tier 1.
So that number 5 is replacing that whole system like Ricardo outlined,
Yes.
and it's 2.6 million.
At 50%.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless there's No, actually stay there if you can.
Oh, so sorry.
I want to go over these tier 2 improvements.
Okay.
So we have some new numbers here actually since Monday, so
Okay.
there's some new numbers. We know that the Chambers has its own issues. And so we wanted to provide some options for that space. And originally we had a much higher number for 3.1, the remodel chambers. This essentially is more of a refresh of chambers. So it provides a level floor. Still provides an ADA restroom and some other minor work, but it's essentially just creating a level floor with furniture essentially rather than built in. It becomes a more flexible space, honestly. And we could meet some of the ADA issues. So that's 1.5 million. 3.2, and I'll go into details after this slide. 3.2 is relocating in Chambers into the main civic building. Actually, it would be in the space that we're in currently. In order to do that, we'd have to modify the manager's office and do some things there. So that's has a higher price tag of 3.5. And then 3.3 is, we kind of kept this on its own as well, but it would be if you move the chambers in to the space and then you wanted to convert the existing chambers into a flat floor, kind of a training space, that would be that 5.5 million. We wanted to throw this back onto the spreadsheet, new flooring and paint. So we wanted to be transparent that we currently don't have funding for new flooring and paint for the project. We feel like it'd be pretty important to do that if we can. I think there may be this is something that we can add really late in the project. If we have project savings, if there's contingency that's not spent, we could pursue doing that improvement. We had originally had storefront in all of the buildings, so new windows, new glazing all throughout. That had a pretty expensive price tag. So we removed it, and now we have the window film that basically keeps it from shattering during a seismic event. Further on the slide, I have some numbers on cost savings there. The garage is only currently a seismic improvement. So the waterproofing and replacing the topping slab is just under or almost 7 million. And then we have the last, I guess there's 2 more there. The generator. We're still looking into and talking to our building and safety folks about the generator. It was installed as a temporary generator and it's still acting as a temporary generator. So there's some discussion around whether or not it can be maintained as temporary or does it need to be permanent. There are some conversations about that. And does our project trigger any of those improvements? And then lastly, tier 2 option would be, fully funding a Peace Plaza improvement to do more there. So, yeah, go ahead and Kelly, you can scroll down to the tier 2 slide.
I'm maybe I'm out of line asking this, but I know that there is a book somewhere here that you all know about what happens in case of an emergency, like a big one, and all you managers know what to do and what the procedures are. Is the location where the city is going to be functioning from City Hall it's not? Okay, so that helps me understand the importance or not importance of the generator here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my line of thinking. Okay, I'm not crazy?
No, you're right on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the current generator is only large enough to fuel, I think, is it a day or?
Yeah, we had heard less than a day.
It's a really short duration.
I think all circuits are tied into.
It's only egress lighting for the library and civic. And I think some of the traffic stuff might be tied to it, but versus the generator at PW Ops.
Thank you.
Yes, for the police station, yeah.
Well, it's my goal to get the first, 3.1, I think it is, the cheap version of the council chambers remodel. It's my goal to get that into this project somehow. So I think that's critical.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear you about the skylights and all that, and I would love to redo those. But I don't think it's critical. And I think because I think there are other options in terms of egress, and I think those council chambers I just see it as such a problem area. So I really want to get that into this project somehow.
On that council members, when you say leveling of the floor, I assume you mean getting rid of the stadium.
Getting rid of the stairs, yeah, and all the stadium crap.
We have some to scroll down to the next.
Keeping the tilt.
Hopefully not keep all ramps.
I can just be brief on this. So current design is window film. There's no thermal improvement, minor impact to visibility. Alternate design would be a full storefront. There is some energy savings, but it would take 116 years to pay back the cost of the windows. So it's such a large ticket item. At 3.1.
They'll fracture during the earthquake too.
Even the new windows will.
Yeah.
Of course they will.
All right, so this is just a picture. You guys are all familiar with this picture. This is just noting that the current project minimum provides seismic improvements to chambers as window film similar to the rest of the structure, and then the ADA upgrades that I mentioned. This is 3.1. This is just a schematic, but essentially it's infilling that flat, infilling the floor to be flat, replacing the carpet, providing a new counselor dais with furniture, not like a fixed area. Yeah, not built in. And then some spectator furniture, some existing lighting, ceiling HVAC. Actually, that would be retained under this scenario because it's just a refresh. And then some minor AV reconfiguration. This is the 3.2, and that was 3.5 million. Moves it in, creates a space, it requires a remodel of the CMO office, provides new walls, ceilings, lightings, etc. And then the next slide is just noting that if you did move the chambers into the building, then you have an opportunity to upgrade that into a new training area. So,
I'm really sad we don't get to knock it down.
It's just for concrete. Yeah, knock it down.
So let's go back to the top or to the
That's right.
options.
The
Options spreadsheet.
So,
Yeah.
may I ask a question? So if we look at this spreadsheet, if 3.1 is the selected item, that's gonna remove 9 million from the total that you have to file.
You are correct, 3.1 or 3.2 or 3.3. You can all be selected independently, and then that means the other two go away.
Yeah.
Right. My goal is for the 3.1, which is for the 1.5 million. I think the others are realistic cost wise, but I think we can figure out what to find somewhere.
One point, sorry, what one?
3.1.
I'm with you, Chris.
The top priority of the tier 2 is the 3.1.
No, that's just me.
I agree with Chris in the idea of which one of the 3.1, 2, or 3. Yes. I think that 3.2 and 3.3 are out of reach.
Yeah.
But I think 3.1 would be a good thing to aim for. I just see so many struggles with folks who are differently abled and
People falling.
people falling. It's just but I don't know if that's my top one on these things, but
So with the chambers, because we have the advantage of the design build method that we are currently designing under, and so we could give our design team the direction that we want to carry a design for 3.1. They can start that now and carry that through, and as project savings or other funding sources are found, then we could fund that chambers improvement pretty late in the project, similar to what we did at the library.
It's basically a standalone project, right?
Yeah, like an alternate.
Yeah. Fair to say, I think the skylights, we don't have the same flexibility. That's pretty working on the rest of the sites.
Same with the roof, right?
Yeah, because we have to decide which direction we're gonna improve the siding from, the underside or the roof side. Which is the roof.
Josh, when do you think we'll know a firm number, or at least a semi-squishy number on the other city fund contributions.
I think, depending on how this conversation goes, if you have a general idea of what priorities you want to include, I think we can bring something back to council probably in October. We can know then.
Do you think the number is likely to be in the 3 range?
I think it's probably in the 3 range.
Awesome.
I would do the math, 3.1.
Yeah, it would be helpful so we know what, because right now it's like, well, we have no idea. That if you think that's at least like.
I think that's attainable.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question about the garage? Is that something, so say it doesn't get covered in this project, is that something that can just get into the CIP? I mean, I'm assuming that would be its normal natural route.
I think that's part of the reason why that's being recommended as sort of the tier 2 level, because it could be done later. Finding $7 million is a challenge, right? And that's going to take more over time, but.
So this project, I mean, it's been talked about ever since I've been here.
Yeah.
And the price has kept going up
Mm-hmm.
over the years. So, and there's no general fund capacity to cover that level of project. So facilities has put Band-Aids in place, but it would have to wait until there was another bond issuance, if there was the political will to have that included in the next bond.
And then a small challenge, I'm sure you'd be thinking about is that the garage would have to be empty when that work is occurring, and it's pretty intrusive work, so City Hall would still be functioning and people would just have to park somewhere else.
Yeah, it's the part that would be the.
Which isn't the end of the world, I don't think. We have a couple of arcades pretty close.
Is there's currently some work in the bond on this, is it the repaving of the road that goes under?
So there was dollars to resurface the kind of pass through road, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we retained that or if we pulled it into the relocation. I'll have to double check.
That's weird that you and I know this.
Yeah.
Those two don't.
It's been in the CIP for quite a while, and as soon as we started talking about this project, we pushed it off. Because we wanted to do it at the same time, and there was an issue, we couldn't do it while the police were located here, because they need to be able to get out either side of it. And we'll find that answer.
We will get the seismic improvement on the garage with this one. That's part of the minimum scope.
Okay. Can we talk about the political implications of us not doing anything at East Plaza? Are we all okay with that?
I don't see political implications. I don't see that. I mean, if it's minimal.
I mean, once
I
you
don't-
explain it, in 30 seconds in, and they're gonna be like, oh, I get why you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't know, we talked about it being a political decision, I guess.
I don't see it as a big deal, personally. That's why I agreed last time for taking it down to the minimum. I mean, I love the idea of.
I love the idea of all this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But to me, now that we've heard from bond council, to me, we don't have to be in there. It's not the.
Those costs keep going up. I mean, we have to have something that we can work with or not work with.
Right. And it's one of those things that we can do. I mean, city council, if it's a priority, if it's a political priority, then they can budget for that money anytime without displacing staff, without having any impact on city operations. We can fund that project today.
I'd say that Peace Plaza is also, if it were part of the project, it's also one of those things that isn't gonna happen until the last
Right.
few months of when the contractor's here, so you could reevaluate, reassess, there could be potential grant,
Right.
Opportunities, maybe the city has chased or is chasing in the future that maybe could make that decision easier in the future.
Or if we somehow don't use the contingency, I mean, it's the amount that, I mean, if we just saved some contingency, that would cover whatever we want almost. I mean,
It's not like it's easy, right?
yeah, it's a piece of cake, just don't spend the contingency, Ricardo, it's fine. But I mean, it's, to me, it's a project that doesn't.
I think the
1.4 million.
Yeah.
And then the contractor just build up the ferry contingency as well.
But those contingencies are there for a reason.
Don't spend them yet.
Yes.
I'm just saying that project could be done in other ways.
So am I hearing to do nothing or just to do just the fountain or what?
What Councilor Sable and I think are both saying is that you don't have to do anything. I mean, I think it'd be great in an ideal world, but I don't think, we're just saying, we're making a different political calculation than I think this staff did.
So there is a little bit in the required, do you wanna go to that and for Peace Plaza? I don't remember.
$850 in there.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
Which we're saying we think we could take out and spend somewhere else.
Scroll up.
Based on Josh's feedback from bond council. That it's not a legal requirement, that it's strictly a political question.
And I think politically, when we say politically, I think, at least from my perspective, is the fact that when we describe this project, we talk about doing improvements to Peace Plaza.
Right.
And so it's on the website, it's probably been said somewhere in some document that I don't necessarily, politically, it might be the wrong word, because there's not really like.
It's a policy question.
I think it's definitely a policy question. It is called out in the ballot language as improvements to Peace Plaza. So I would hesitate to not do anything. But I think the magnitude, that's where the bond council's not gonna weigh in, and it's really up to this body and city council about what level of improvement. But I would hesitate to say nothing, no improvement.
I had asked in our pre-meeting to break out the cost of Peace Plaza. What is just the fountain?
100,000.
It's 100.
So, Josh, and what I'm hearing is we don't have to make a decision today whether we're going to do anything with Peace Plaza, right? So I think depending on how the project goes, we can always make the decision at some point. So,
My thought is with that flexibility of maybe fixing the fountain for a small amount, but giving the perspective that we've chosen to hold off on other refurbishing of Peace Plaza because of money needing to go to some of the structural changes. I think that's a good political statement. But I think that at least the fountain, just so that it's not that dead weight looking thing.
Right. No, I would love to have the fountain.
But again, I'm an alternate. I'm just.
You're gonna have a vote when we get to council.
I'm just saying that I think that minimum and that we could explain that we're trying to preserve the funds for the other very structurally important projects, and that future could maybe hold improvements to the park and that they could be done separately.
So can I ask the question?
Yeah.
I know. I'm gonna ask a second one.
Do you have initials behind your name?
You made a question, Esther.
Okay, good. Go.
No.
Kelly, you're right. Go.
Thank you. So it sounds revisiting these top ones, right? Because obviously all in, there's too much. So it sounds like we're comfortable with maybe moving forward with this one and this one. And it seems like these two are gray, or maybe, am I understanding that?
I think there's a desire to include everything in design at this point and then make sure we understand other funds that might be available.
Okay.
Hopefully to fund the tier one
Completely.
plus
Got it.
3.1.
Okay.
Yes,
That's what-
and I'm just
That's what
forecasting
they're
that I could
already
live with number 5 coming out,
Okay,
but I would prefer that it not come out,
perfect.
but I could live with it.
And so the red number with the Peace Plaza change would essentially be cut in half, the deficit currently, because we wouldn't be spending $750,000 on the concrete and landscaping work right now.
It feels like we'd want to put that in tier 2.
Yeah.
And get a sense from you all sort of where that ranks.
You want us to rank tier 2,
Yes.
which we have not done yet.
I think that one.
I just think my sense of the ballot measure title gives people the impression we're intending to do something with Peace Plaza. And I don't know that people parse the language quite as closely as we do to see what is
Out there, butt on the line.
I think you've got a good rationale for the decision you want to make. At the same time, I'd like to see it, not pushed off the stove, but be there. Especially given what we're saying about timing. This is something that we can add later, and if there's contingency, hopefully this is in a position to move forward. We've done, have some great design idea that can easily be.
So are you saying to reduce it down to just the fountain or include a little bit more?
Well, I think that's the,
Fountain plus optional, that keep it on the list with those optional things, is what I heard Bob say. So do something, don't do nothing,
Right, what did the fountain include?
just fixing the fountains.
Just fixing
That would
the
be zero
existing
and
structure.
fixing the fountain, right? And then
It's making it
supplemental ones is
Right.
tier two.
safe,
Right.
because the fountain has to be potable
Meet
water,
fresh water.
and then it can't be a safety risk, by having standing pooling water for the city, so it's a little bit more complicated, but that's why it's 100,000.
It's not just replacing a pump.
Yeah. And so I'm hearing that the fountain would be essentially what we're considering the base project requirement, and then we carry a Peace Plaza nice design for an alternate in hopes that we can afford it.
Does that work for people?
Potentially encourage the Peace Plaza Foundation to seek other revenue that could then support it.
and it helps to have something here to
Sure.
leverage that other.
Right, and maybe the Library Foundation folks would want to contribute, and maybe they would see that as helpful to the library, I don't know.
That's true.
Because they really stepped up during the library retrofit.
I think there's possibilities.
I was just wondering, so 3.1, we're trying to move above the line, 3.2 and 3.3, we're gonna leave below the line. Could we talk about ranking?
Yeah.
4, 7s, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think 10 goes away, right? Because we're gonna have something
Correct.
else for that.
10 goes below whatever the next line is.
Let's call it.
And I would call
tier 4.
So 3.2, 3.3, and 10 all go away, go down
Tier three now.
to tier 3 or tier 4.
Or the abyss.
They go to the basement.
I would say for me, 3.1 would be the top, but then I think next would be the garage repairs for me. I don't know how other people feel.
The waterproofing.
I would rather do new flooring and paint. I don't care about the garage, honestly. I don't think it adds to our worker experience, the employee experience. I would love to be able to give our employees something of an upgrade.
Yes.
And I think that new flooring and new paint it's not that much, and I think it could do something to help. And I really feel like we need to do that for our employees if we can.
Question, when we replace the water stuff here, does that also replace the water stuff out in the garage? The pipes, you know, the ones that leak on you all the time?
No, those are that's irrigation for the that's road.
The one that leaks out of my car is not water. It doesn't evaporate. There's something in it.
Some of those pipes are dry pipes.
There's oily something in it that doesn't evaporate. It just sits there forever.
In the mayor, above the mayor's.
Right in front of my
car.
car.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's not water.
It'll be.
Anyway, we don't want to get the card on that one. So I would love to see new flooring and new paint. I would put the new windows higher to the top of the list personally. I think that energy savings, even though it takes a long time for repayment, I just think that having new windows rather than film, which I'm not convinced that film's going to be a great experience for people working inside. I feel like new windows could be also that little bit of upgrade for people who have to spend a lot of their lives in this.
From a comfort standpoint, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll see much more improvement.
Yeah, and for me, it's those two at the top. And then I'd probably put the generator after that.
Then the garage.
And then the garage. Yeah, for me, but what do others think?
I went 3.1 first, and then for similar reasons, went with the flooring and paint. I think it's a signal to staff, and it's the kind of thing you have to do, and the cost is good. Cost is good. And then third for me was garage, and then generator, and then I had the windows, as opposed to film is the fifth.
Okay, we're probably never gonna get that part on the list, but either way, it doesn't matter, third or fifth.
Very true. Bob, did you have something to add?
I think I'm with Chris on the priority.
Okay.
I'm with Chris. I mean, I would like the garage. I understand, but for $7 million, it's not gonna happen at this stage, yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that and you convinced me. I think it's really important what you were saying about employee satisfaction here. And the fact that the lower price tag means that we could do more. So I get that. It's really frustrating to see a project like the garage just continue to get kicked down the road. And at some point in time, it's gonna become an issue you can't ignore. And at that point in time, it's gonna be astronomically expensive.
The other thing about that though is that is one of the projects that we could do without relocating the staff, so we can continue operations, so it is more standalone-ish than
I agree.
others.
Yeah.
You know,
So it sounds like
You just
everyone.
have to park someplace else.
yeah, we would just have to accommodate parking.
You just have to put everything in place.
So
Use the library, use these plaza.
They may choose to work at home.
everyone's in agreement on 3.1 and then the number 4, which was the paint. For the top 2 of tier 2. Okay,
And then the majority was replacing.
number
all
7.
Storefront windows.
Yeah.
And then the generator and the garage.
Yeah, that's about kind of how I heard the majority of the consensus.
3.2.
3.2.
Can go away.
And 10.
Are there any structural issues with the garage at this point that have been identified?
They are gonna get it is gonna get a seismic.
Okay,
It is, right?
Okay. it is gonna get that part.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna get seismic. no matter what.
Similar to the library, probably. The library
Yes,
garage.
yes, very
So
similar.
if you've
Okay.
driven through that, extra panels.
Will the
Okay.
council chambers stay standing
No.
after you're done?
No. There's no.
After
The
earthquake?
retrofit.
Yeah, out
Yes.
of the chambers.
Look at, he said yes. Cause we talk about us becoming European quite a bit.
No, yeah, the whole
Yeah.
building will be intact. May not be.
To get us out.
We
It's-
won't have
it's-
access.
Yeah, it may not be able to reoccupy, but it's safe to exit. And then it'll get inspected.
If somebody can hit the foot pedal under the mayor's desk, the jets will fire and lift off. It'll be fine.
That's a good idea.
There's a foot pedal under there. It's on the button. Yeah. It's an exit pod, 100%.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you get from us what you were hoping?
Yes, I did. Yeah, this is great. This is really good.
Good.
Our design team is anxious to get some clear direction, and I think this will give them that.
It would maybe solidify that, but I think it would be good for this group to see the more final version before it goes to council if possible. Is that possible?
Yeah, we might,
You could move up our next meeting
yeah,
or
we might have to
something.
do both your next meeting, just to give space.
Yeah. Yeah, I would at least like this group have a chance to weigh in on it. Once we see your better number and the priorities and just, as numbers, it seems like the farther along we get, the more they get refined. So I think it would be good for this group, so we could be sure that we have something solid to say, yes, this is what we recommend. Right now, it still feels a little bit squishy.
Do we know what our next meeting holds for us? I know we've worked on Union Street a little bit. I don't know when that's coming back to this group.
Yeah, that's on my list. There's some parks items that we want to bring next time related to ball field replacement or the type of turf that goes back in and scheduling between here and McKay. So those are things that I know.
Awesome.
A couple other things hanging out there, and I don't know if it's October, but the affordable housing allocation, talking about how we want to go with that. And also, a premium question that I spoke about earlier, if you'd like to talk about that, let's keep it.
Our next meeting is scheduled for the 24th of October, and we have a council meeting on the 28th.
Yeah, so we probably asked to move, meeting up at least a week, just for the deadlines to get into it.
That would be great. I'm not available very much.
Could we just make a motion to suspend the rules?
Oh, so
If you want to
she's
lock it
trying
on,
to
we
be
can.
funny. She's
No, I'm
trying
being
to be
serious.
funny.
I was.
She's trying to be
Hold it
funny.
together.
She's trying to be funny. Unless we wanted a different date, like I could do the 18th that week, Friday.
Let's talk about it internally.
Okay.
And it might be that maybe the first November meeting makes more sense to bring it back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great. That would be perfect. That would line up then. Okay. Any other feedback that the group has for staff or questions? Thanks, everybody. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, Brian.
Brian, go to bed. Go.